Welcome back to the Better Learning Podcast. We are continuing our conversations at EDspaces in Columbus, Ohio. We hope you're enjoying this series, and let's dive back in. All right, we're back with the podcast here at EDspaces here in Columbus, Ohio. I'm here with our next guest. We're starting to kind of actually wrap up the show, and I've heard a lot of different takes on radically student-centered. But I'm really excited. We've gotten a lot of architects today, so I'm really excited to kind of get back into the school leadership side here. So David, I want to bring you on. Just give a little introduction to yourself, your name, who you're with, and let's do a fun fact about you.
Oh, fun fact. Okay. Well, David Shulkin. My title is Director of Instructional Technology, which is nothing more than the fact that I haven't really done my job in about 4 or 5 years because I've been doing a bond work in construction and had done that, even earlier on in my career where I'm at. And so, yeah, that I have, and thank goodness I have a great team because they're able to kind of do those things that I'm not able to do. But fun fact for me, actually, my previous career was actually in television, and I was talking to one of your colleagues around that. It was an interesting story. My business partner and I, we were doing a TV pilot, and this was back in the 90s, and back then pilot season was a little bit different. So you had to create, and then there was a pitch season, and so you had to wait. And so I was living in Chicago at that time, and do a pilot. And I needed some time for a job. Just before that, we would go. So I needed some, health benefits or whatever it might be. And so there was this video operations that I would do. And I'm like, hey, I can do this at the school district. It's no big deal. I got there, man. I hated it. It was the most frustrating thing because I was from this high-paced corporate, right? And I went into this. I'm like, what is going on? And about 6 months in, we didn't get picked up. We're going to do another one. And 6 months in, I'm like, oh, I get it. I'm like, oh, right. It just started to click for me. And then I started seeing what this district was doing and its thought. It was kind of progressive and we were very, very high socioeconomic. So we're very blessed in many ways. And so it just became more and more attractive. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should kind of hang around here a little bit longer. And so that was my journey in, and then just kind of kept moving through. And much of my time in terms of education has been either higher ed, where I would teach classes, and or mostly adult ed. So teaching staff, right? And that change. And really, Matt, you and I were talking about, what a lot of you guys do is change management, right? That's our lives in so many ways. We are constantly like, okay, how do I tweak this? How do the humans that are in these spaces are doing whatever we want them to change, their behaviors or whatever it might be. How do we activate them? How do we influence them? And then how do we measure? Did we do okay? And those are all those kind of challenges we do every single day.
Oh man, what an intro. That's amazing. So I gotta hear before we get into this, because it seems like your journey a little bit, it probably was not the way you kind of maybe saw it going at first. Where did you kind of see, maybe coming out of school, where did you see your career path going before?
I was working I really was working in television. Yeah. So I truly was. And at that time I was at corporate video. So which was a great place. And that company actually was a worldwide company. At the last place I worked, it was great. Did a lot of great stuff. It was just beautiful and wonderful. And then actually up until I have twin girls, and up until they were born, I would still on the weekends or whatever, I'm like, hey, and I had all my friends, all my colleagues who were still working in the business. They're like, hey, Dave, we need an audio guy or we need a camera. I'm like, I'm in, I'll come, I'll do the minor league hockey or whatever we were doing. Right. I enjoyed that.
That's amazing. Yeah. And twin girls, I'm a twin myself. So I am, that's one of the things. So my wife and I, we got married about a year ago, and we're the kid conversation obviously comes up now, and we started looking back at our history, and twins are everywhere. I mean, normally they say it skips a generation, not in both of our families. It's a weird thing. So, but I loved being a twin. What's it like having twins?
So I think probably one of the most fascinating things about it is I could give them the exact same stimuli, right? Yeah. Exact same thing, and they totally do something different.
Oh, yeah.
And that, I think for me and my wife, that was the most fascinating thing. And actually, the state of Michigan State University, they actually do a twin study. So we get the survey every once in a while that we kind of give feedback around, but it's fascinating. That's been the coolest thing. Yeah. And they're truly different, and they're fraternal. So they really don't look the same. Yep. And one's like tall, I got a little, one's little.
Yep. That's same here. Yep. Same here. Yeah. So I've got a twin sister. Yeah. And we have complete opposite personalities. I'm, more of the outgoing one. She's more of the to herself. Interests are very different. But it's funny is like, we're still very, very close, So, yeah, that bond's still there. So yeah, it's an awesome experience.
That's cool.
So,
And
yeah.
so now you're destined for twins. Who knows, right?
I don't know. If it happens, I hope it happens early to where we're not like saying we're on our last one and then we have the twins then.
Yeah.
That would be tough. Yeah.
It's a
So
different journey, right?
yeah. Well, awesome. Well, let's get back on track. We're talking radically student centered. I've done, like I said, a lot of different interviews on radically student centered. I really want to dig into you and your work, your history, your background. What is radically student centered on the surface?
Sure.
When you hear that term, just define that for me on how you would kind of express that.
Well, for educators, I mean, we've been talking about student-centered for probably the last almost 100 years, probably in that range. I think, that's, I'm getting way off track there, but I think in some of my advanced work, I remember we were talking about student-centered maybe in the early 1900s. Anyway, particularly around instructional technology, which is kind of my, my space. But the kind of thinking about it, what it is for me, and this is when I hear about it, when I think about this, I really think about really two things. And it's choice is one of those things, but it's actually what students need. It's so needs and choice. And everything else beyond that, we kind of get. We're like, oh, we're going to have flexible and, all these other things that kind of meet those, but those needs. And I think about, so we're very fortunate. Our district actually is a county program for other things. So for example, we have deaf and hard of hearing in our space from the county. And so students from around the county come in for our services and they're, we also have a center that has students who with grave disabilities. So they're paraplegics, those kind of things. And so in my mind, when I come in, there are some needs, right? And so when you think about design and those spaces and the experiences they have, you have to meet some different needs than just the general classroom. Because we can all copy and paste. Every designer, every architect, we can copy and paste and do it all day long. But we know, and all the good ones, they know, we have those conversations about what those needs really are and what problems are we solving or what opportunities are we taking advantage of.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my probably biggest takeaway around this, just needs and then choice around that. So if my need is, I need to, we all know this, but if I'm a student who needs to move, how can I give that student choice in that space, right? Or I need that student loves to read, but laying down. Do I have carpet, right? I mean, like all those kind of, when we talk about a dynamic learning space, are we able to give students choice, which ultimately we talk about this word agency, right? Those are those kind of things.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let's tie it into your work now. So we kind of talked about it off air. You guys are leading a lot of amazing work right now, a lot of projects in your district. What's a memorable moment when you saw students experience a newly designed or renovated space for the first time? I want to hear your take on that.
So probably, I got a couple, but one, so really one of my first most dynamic projects, we were redoing our high school. We were combining two high schools to one, and we really went, so let me start it this way. So when we started engaging our stakeholders, right, we do the normal things. You're going to engage your stakeholders. You're going to have student voice, staff voice, community voice, right? All the normal things we all do. Well, and we did. We got those, and there was a good friend of mine. Her and I were really on the same team. We kind of drove a lot of this work. There was really three of us. And we started thinking about, all right, all of these things. We're like, we love this. Like, say, for example, your teacher's like, oh, I want flexible furniture, right? All the normal check boxes we would do. Well, then we built it, and it was on steroids for them. And they're like, oh my gosh, what did you do to us? And it's like, you've got too much space and blah, blah, blah. What we really did around that, and this is what I love about this project was, you know how like in a normal old school, we've got the hallway and then you got just boxes really to it, right? And so you think about, let's just say for argument's sake, the hallway takes up 20% of that square footage. So in our high school build, we only about 7% is hallway. And so all learning space. And so then, you need to furnish that or build that so students, staff can move around there. And so all of that, like we site visited, we did all those kind of things. And we're like, we've got this dream, we're building it, we're doing it. And then we didn't have, because we probably should have took another 6 months before we opened the building, you were like, we're going to open in the fall. And so we didn't have enough training for staff, right? We were still like, I mean, for me, the dirty secret was I still had 3 years after that finishing technology in that building, just because it was so much work. But the takeaway was I was with the facility director. Staff had just started to come back. I'm still in a hard hat. And we're looking, and staff with no training, right? No anything are using the spaces. They're just right. So they push things over. They've got that. They're talking. I'm like, I mean, if there was ever a matter, that was just like one of those moments like, bam, we did it. And then the students came a week later. Bam, same thing. with common spaces. They just went there. It was just natural for them. And some of the stuff hadn't all been furnished yet. So they're just on the floor.
Yeah.
But they started using those spaces. And so that was one of those moments like, yes, we did it right. Like, because I didn't know. Right?
Yeah.
And we knew what we thought we knew. And then we did it. And then, wow, it turned out really well.
That's amazing. And I know you kind of scratched the surface there on it, but I want to dig just a little bit deeper into like the process that you guys took. Cause I've had a lot of conversations and a lot of people were going through this project, but there's a lot of resistance. Like resistance is a lot, but you're kind of saying the opposite. Like you got in there and you're seeing everybody use it in different ways. Like it's exactly how you envisioned it. Like what was the secret sauce to that?
Well, I don't know, but so then fast forward. So about 5 years ago, we passed another bond. We're going to do our K-8 spaces. So our middle schools, we're going to consolidate from 3 middle schools to 2, and we're going to renovate our elementary. They had like 4 elementaries, and we had some early childhood centers, and we still have a farm and nature center. So we're very, very unique in our district, very, very blessed. So it's kind of cool. But probably thinking about that, I was like, all right, I remember what we did there. So let's try to recreate it and tweak a few things. So for example, what we did earlier on is that I remember me and my colleague did 110 chairs seat test, right? And then we picked like our top 20, and then staff got to choose, right? So, and then students got to choose. And so I think about that stakeholder input. We talk about it all the time. For us, it was like a very purposeful engagement with each one of those groups and at different times along that and pathways. And then we would actually try to close the loop. Because that was the one thing that early on is like, sometimes we didn't close the loop well. And so this last time, the last 5 years, I'm got to close the loop on this. So say students love these things. I've got pilot furniture now that we're piloting. I want to close that loop with them. And so it was great. And that really provided a lot. And I think last look, and boy, I think I'm a little over 2,000 hours of stakeholder input and engagement where and some of that is just meeting, right? Design meetings or what we're going over. But in the last 5, that's a lot. And we engage, and then surveys. And the one thing that was even better this time that I was very proud of is we had a lot of community engagement. So we thought we had some pilot. We did probably a little over a couple dozen or so pilot rooms, different vendors and manufacturers, all those kind of things, right? And then we had the community come in, and so parents could sit and see. And they're like, yes, my son would love this, my daughter, right? And they would talk about this, and we would capture that kind of qualitatively, observe it, and then we had them surveys. That was great because then we started really thinking about student choice. And so when we think about something, let's say like a typical elementary classroom, fitted it with normal, very flexible furniture. But one thing that was different, maybe not different, not really unique, but let's say I had normal chairs with backs on it. And then I had like wobble stools, right? So, and then I provided for student choice. Totally meant. Now, parents love that. Teachers had kind of the resistance, right? They had a little different feel around those things. And so that, and Matt, in your space as well, change management is really all we do, right? That's a lot of the things that we do. We talk about, all right, how we're engaging humans in these spaces and how are we going to change behaviors or change practice and blah, blah, blah. For me, when I think about those, it's usually 2 different things. Like when we're engaging like staff, for example, hey, I want to think about your new space and I don't want you just having rows or whatever it might be. And typically there's 2 things. One is like, do you have enough clarity and purpose around why you're doing this? And for us, while we talked a lot about it, we had a ton of input. Sometimes it didn't always land, right? I was like Darth Vader. I was like Darth Vader. I'd come to a staff meeting, like, oh, here, dude, coming. Here we go. We're going to talk about something, right? And so I say that, so that was kind of that clarity, right? Trying to keep that clarity around what that meant for student choice, what it meant for you, and then thinking about your classroom and practice. And then the other one is that kind of that loss of control, and which is real. Mm-hmm. And I remember I had a change management class. This was like probably in the late 90s or something. And it taught me about the biological reaction to change, right? It's a threat. And so then some of us rationalize a little bit different, kind of manage through it. And so I'm always very sensitive to that. All right, so if there is resistance, is the resistance just their normal process, which can be, right? For all of us, we're like, all right, this seems like a threat, Dave. You're going to change. I want my desk here, right? Or whatever. And then they may have to go through that process. And so how do you engage them? So that's my long-winded way of saying it. Like, we just try to keep closing the loop and keeping the engagement going. Yeah, I'm not 100% perfect. I'm still, some of those classrooms I'm going into now, in our elementaries particularly, I'm like, it looks just like it was before. Yeah. And we didn't really move the needle, and not necessarily in a bad way, but I see students, right? So the staff hasn't maybe changed, but I'm seeing students do things that they weren't doing before. And that is the takeaway, right? I'm like, oh, that's the metric. It may not, it may the staff resistant or the staff rationale around why this doesn't work. And I'll give you an example, Matt. I got this one teacher, and and we have a great relationship. She's like, "Hey, Dave, this does not work. I wish I could do this, whatever." And then I go into her classroom, and literally, man, it's the most dynamic classroom. Kids are moving things. She allows them. I'm like, oh, I don't want to say her name, but I'm like, you are doing it. Like, you don't get it. You are totally doing it. You just don't see it maybe in the mindset.
Yeah. I agree. And I feel like these moments that you're bringing up are definitely ones that I can resonate with, and, the work that we've done. So yeah, I mean, it's great to kind of hear it on that perspective too. And I love hearing just the reassurance that you have with when you kind of step back and do that visioning of it, you can see it's working, right? So I want to kind of ask, so it sounds like you guys have gone through this process. It's kind of, some of it's already done. Are you guys in the midst of some more work?
Yeah, we still have
work to go.
Yeah, we still have probably about another 1.5 to 2 years, likely when we get done. And
is that other schools within the district? Is that okay?
So, and really probably we got a little bit in the high school. We're doing some refresh there and some other spaces. So, and most of that's not really exciting because they have very dynamic already. It's actually just kind of some of the old parts of the building that got to be taken care of. And then we have a nature and farm in our spaces as well. And so those they're kind of cool. They're very dynamic learning spaces for a variety of reasons. Yeah. And outdoor learning and that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Would you do anything different, like, or will you be doing anything different, like going through the process that you've done before and with the work that's still ahead? Is there anything that you would, or any pieces of advices that you would give?
That's a great question. We always say you never can over communicate. You can, but you know how it is. You have to. You just have to. Okay. Engaging. I think probably engaging and closing that loop as best I can. So even on an individual basis of just having those conversations, because this is the one thing this is probably my big takeaway around this. I realized that having the conversation, whether there was any kind of resolution to what we were talking about, that was more powerful than actually probably than the real outcome of maybe they wanted to change, I wanted to change, right? It was the conversation around that. And so then in many ways, I'm like, I need to evangelize this day to day, every day, go have those conversations and meet teachers where they're at. Because you know how like and I don't want to throw any other people under the bus, but there are some districts who are like, no, you're getting this and this and this, and there's like no voice, but you have to have that voice that is closest to the work that you do. Otherwise you're missing something, or there's a real opportunity to miss something, right?
Sure. Yeah. That's great. So now what I like to do with all of our guests is we've talked about radically student-centered. We've defined it. We've now talked about it, how it's applicable in the work that you're doing. Now let's kind of switch gears and talk about radically student-centered. How do you see that mindset evolving over the next 5, 10, even maybe 50 years down the road? Because as you're going through these projects, I mean, you're having to think that far out, right? So, I guess that mindset, how do you see that evolving over the next 50 years?
Probably one thing that's been on my mind, and obviously I'm instructional technology, so I'm working around technology. Now I see the classroom and furniture, stuff that's on the wall, electronics, all is technology. And so I'll give you an example. So one of my favorite professors at the University of Michigan, Liz Kolb, she wrote a book, and it's really around technology integrations, the triple E framework. I kind of appropriated that to our kind of work that we were doing. So here it is. So whenever we were looking at furniture, anything that was going to go into space, our metric or our kind of litmus test was, did it enhance the space or learning or engagement or experience? Did it engage the staff or students? And then did it extend? Could I extend the classroom? Could I extend learning experiences? So that was like the model. And I loved it. My board was they're very supportive of that model. And so we really talked, it was very philosophical and intellectual and blah, blah, blah. But it actually really worked, because then I could talk to teachers and say, hey, don't forget that space over there can extend your classroom. It can extend the experience. So, and so, man, I'm kind of got off where we're headed with that, but that's kind of like the things that I've been thinking about around that. And then when I think about like future, so AI, right? This is a big deal. We know it's a disruptor, more disruptive than anything, because it's going to be a short timeline of disruption. So when we think about careers and jobs moving forward, when I'm thinking about the designs in the space, for example, I do a lot of career connectedness. How are we connecting people? And when I think about those things, we're really not necessarily saying, Matt, hey, you're going to see the speaker from whatever, right? It's not really necessarily about you wanting that career, but it's just about creating dreams for people, right? Our students. And so they can dream about a future, and that's powerful. So when I think about design and I think about the space of learning is how do we create those experiences that allow us to dream and have imagination? Because we know we kind of kill imagination as we get a little bit older, and by middle school, we're like banging it out of you, right? Anyway, but talking about that. So when we were talking to Jessica right before this, and something that's come to my mind, and I've been kind of grappling with this. I was at an AI summit just a couple weeks ago. So for example, when we design a classroom, and our designers might say, hey, this is a collaboration space, and this is the sit on the floor space, or where, right? We might kind of break those in like centers or so. But once we engage that classroom, we're not calling it that anymore. And I thought, man, when I look at like the World Economic Forum's list of skills that are needed for just the next 5 years, and for example, I just did this with my board the other day. I was talking about, hey, what classes do we teach on this list of these skills? None of them, right? Now, it doesn't mean we need to read, we need to math, because we can't do a lot of these things. We don't. But it's like we have to talk about these skills in a way. And so I'm like, I'm here at EDspace. I'm thinking, man, why am I not calling it the collaboration space? Why am I not calling this the critical thinking space? And I say space, but you know what I mean? It could be any of those things, or how I might do something. And so now I'm like, okay, now I got to kind of work through that idea. And so I say all that because when we think about the future is now I need to think about what are real skills and competencies and things we've talked about in education forever, but what does that look like in 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But staying ahead of that curve, I mean, we're only making it easier to adapt when those new skills come up, trying to always kind of stay. So exactly. So I really loved hearing how you're looking at those, you're looking at those and saying, we might not be able to do this now, but how can we do it? What can we be doing to forward think to get to that point? So I love to hear that. Is there any closing remarks that you had?
I've been really fortunate to work in education. Like I said, I hated it when I got there, and then it clicked for me. And the one thing that I had a great mentor. She was an assistant superintendent. She was actually an old elementary or a previous elementary principal. And she'd always told me, hey, Dave, whenever you're having a bad day, I just want you to go spend a couple hours in the elementary. And it just reminds you what you're doing. And when you think about our little ones growing, and of course, that's the only place where your clients hug you. You're like, hey, Mr. Shulkin, you know what I mean? It's just, you're never going to feel bad when you come out of there, right? So you're just going to feel great. But I think that has been satisfying for me because I know that we're having an impact. And even if it's in our little world, it's still impactful and we share. So what I've been really proud about our district was we want to be leaders, but very humbly, because we're not doing anything special. We're doing what we all think we should be doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. And I'm glad you ended up where you are because it sounds like you're doing some really amazing work. I will say, though, you have the perfect radio voice. So even if you would have stayed in television, I think you would have had a great career there as well. But we appreciate you having coming onto the show here. Enjoy the rest of your time in Columbus. And we'll be talking soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this special EDspaces edition of the Better Learning Podcast. We hope today's conversation sparked new ideas and reminded you just how powerful student-centered learning environments can be. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow the podcast and share it with someone who's passionate about improving education. And as always, keep pushing forward, keep rethinking what's possible, and keep making learning better, one space at a time. We'll see you in the next episode.